Why do you think that you have the right to silence me?
I always said that I don't want to be heard, I want to be felt. I don't want to make my mark, I want to make my dent.
I didn't realize at the time that I was actually one of the biggest activists and largest organizers of white nationalism and alt-right in the United States.
They are what is considered by most people sort of your button-up white supremacists, your suit and tie Nazis.
Arguably, what they spew, while it's hateful and deplorable, is political speech, and so therefore it's protected under the Constitution.
Pat, why are you letting the fascists down here? You've got us blocked off, but you're letting the fascists come and harass us? We want them out of here now, damn it, or we're coming over the fucking barrier!
I can't walk in fear, and we don't walk in fear, you know. And I thank God for that.
Honestly, I wanted to make sure that when I left this earth, there would be something left behind that was worth a damn.
What's up, y'all? We got a show for you today. First of all, I'm Daryl.
Hey, Christian here.
Beth.
And this is, why can't I say my regular my show's name? Antifascism O.G. This is that show. And once again, in case you haven't noticed, we are pre-recording. As for those who don't know, we're going to be doing this from here on in because we've been having issues with some of our tech, and we really want to give you a good show. So we're going to do this for the long term. And who knows? Like I said, in the last show. We might go back to the live stuff, but not right now. Not right now. So, and that gives us an opportunity to actually really just crank in some really good content here because we'll be able to talk to people at a longer clip. And the reason why I'm saying that because we got a really engaging interview that we just finished and it's with my brother Not4Prophet from the band Ricanstruction. It was one of those interviews where, and he's always doing this to me. I mean, he always got me schooled all the time, and I just basically, I mean, Beth sat and just listened. And I just basically I spoke here and there, made my points here and there, but between Christian and Prof, it was just basically, I'm just gonna shut up and just let things be said.
I learned so much. I learned so much and got so much work to do with things that were mentioned that I want to learn more about.
Christian, yeah, and
Yeah.
anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, he was a great artist. I mean, like I've been a fan for 2 decades now, and it was an honor to finally sit down and get to just like pick his brain, and quite frankly, ask questions that I've been burning to ask for 20 years. So, like the two of you, I learned a lot, and I hope that our fans out there, that the people out there, that they learn from it as much as we did.
And it all goes back to what we was talking about a couple of weeks ago. We're going to talk a lot about this on the when you hear the interview, about having to basically take control of your culture and your heritage. And in this case, it's through music. And that's one of the things that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and why we wanted to have Reconstruction on the show, or rather, Not for Profit on the show. Um, we're going to do our part. We're going to do our part in because we can't, because you got at one point you got to stop complaining and just say, okay, what can we do? So what we can do is just spotlight folks that we think are important for those to check out. Now, this show, I mean, we're recording this on th Thursday, um and it's on Friday. So you should be able, so there are some events, and Prophet's going to talk about that in the interview. There's some events coming up where you can actually go see Reconstruction in the New York area, New York City area. And oh yeah, and also in Philly. In Philly. That's right, I forgot. Um, but we're not gonna waste too much of your time hearing us jaw. We're gonna go just straight to the interview, because I think you want to hear that a lot more than just us three talking about it. So here we go. All right, so here we are. We're here together to talk about a brother that I have known for pretty much 30 years. And we um years ago there was an event that I've gone around many times with my camera, with my video camera, and I used to videotape a number of bands um in New York and New Jersey. And one of the bands that I repeatedly videotaped was a band called Reconstruction. And y'all might be familiar with the band because they had performed, they or rather I showed some video that they did back a couple of months ago, a couple of weeks ago, I'm sorry. And we wanted to have the brother who sang in that video, and talk about his many uh projects over the past, I don't know, 20, 30 years. And this is a good pop chance to just talk about it right quick. So I want to introduce everybody to the lead singer of Reconstruction, named Not for Profit. I just want to say hello. What's going on, bro?
What's up, man?
Doing good, doing good. Um,
Mm.
how you feeling for now we was talking about just a minute ago that you was gonna you're gonna have a really busy weekend. This is showing, we're shooting this on Thursday, but people are watching this for the first time on Friday, so people have an opportunity to see what you got going on. Let's start off with that. What's going on this weekend?
Yeah, Saturday we're at something called the Latin Punk Fest 26, and that's in Philadelphia. I don't have the address in front of me, but it's in Philadelphia, so people can find it. And then on Sunday, we're back in New York at this place called Berlin, which is actually in the Lower East Side.
And this is, I mean, you're hopping quite a bit. How long when's the last time, have you played a lot over the past, I don't know, 2 or 3 years? Or is
Yeah,
this
yeah. Last week, we actually we were in Union Square Park for May Day. And yeah, I mean we were not working as Reconstruction for quite a long time, and we recently, within the year, got a new guitarist and came back. We were yeah, we had all sort of moved on to other things, some things I won't talk about on here, but uh I don't know, we started having people, I guess probably because of the current regime that's in control of the United States. A lot of people telling us, "Oh, you guys needed to be around now." So we got a new guitarist, and started performing again and started writing new songs. And we've got a album coming out this year, and then we've got a new single coming out on July 25th, which is the anniversary of the U.S. colonization of Puerto Rico. And that song is called PLO Style, which is a shout out to the PLO. And that's coming out July 25th. So yeah, so we basically started doing things again as Ricanstruction.
And that's good. I'm happy to see it. And I definitely got to start going to some of the shows. Would like. I mean, unfortunately, I got some things going on over the next couple of uh next couple of days. And I won't even be in the area, but I'm definitely going to be scoping y'all out over the summer and all of that. Christian, do you have questions?
Yeah, hey, so Prophet, nice to meet you. My name is Christian, big fan from 20 years ago. I've been talking to Daryl about meeting you for some time now. I just want to show that I do have the original Liberation Day CD here. It took me forever to find it back in the day, but I was able to get a copy of it, and I love it. The first time I heard Mad Like Farrakhan, it really blew my mind. So it is really an honor to meet you here today. So like I have a million questions in my head, but the first question I want to ask you is like, what keeps you creating after all these years? What keeps you active?
I mean, I guess for me, I never really considered myself a musician or a music maker or even an artist. And for me, the music and the art was really just a means of getting other ideas and other messages out. And my parents were Puerto Rican nationalists, so I grew up as part of that. And I used to always joke, I was like, well, if Malcolm X was alive today, he'd be a MC in a hip hop group, and if Che Guevara was alive today, he'd be, a singer in a punk rock band. So I was like, okay, I mean, nobody believes politicians and nobody believes preachers. And, so to me, it's like, okay, who do people, and that's changing too, but who do people believe for the most part? They believe artists, they believe music makers, they believe the people that are doing something and not really doing it for money or for fame, And so for me, it was always like, okay, well, you know, do do something where you can reach people, but also do it in such a way that you're not, so to speak, sleeping with the enemy. And so for me, it was always about, okay, not only doing music and art, but doing it as an anti-corporate music maker and artist. And so that's been our main thing with Reconstruction and everything I've ever done since then. The idea was to be anti-corporate, and
So, being the son of a Puerto Rican nationalist, was there a moment, like if you grew up with it, like kind of always in the house, was there a particular moment that you remember being radicalized, or it was one of those things that was just always a constant in your house growing up?
yeah, I mean, I would say for me, it was always a constant. But yeah, it's interesting because specifically as far as being, an independentista, pro-independence, and so that was always there. But when I was 10, my father bought me a copy of the autobiography of Malcolm X, and strangely enough, that resonated more for me than the Puerto Rican struggle itself, exactly. And because growing up in New York City, it was a whole different vibration than if I had grown up in Puerto Rico. And
Hmm.
so for me, it was like, okay, well, Malcolm X, I related to more, and I started putting the pieces together in terms of the Black liberation struggle and the Puerto Rican liberation struggle. And I was like, okay, they're actually the same thing, But yeah, I think that for me was kind of when I started seeing myself as something that could be part of this struggle, as opposed to sort of following in the footsteps of my parents.
And I think it's really important that you said that because you we're going to another thing that we have been talking about, and you actually one of the things you had stated in some of our back and forth on Facebook. I mean, because one of the things that got us wanting to start talking more and more about music is because of that silly article from a couple of weeks ago that I saw where people are looking for this generation's protest music. And it speaks to the concerns about corporate music, um, and you know the possibility that such a thing can remove the soul, the heart of a lot of what is being conveyed in these songs. And I wanted to ask you if you had anything to continue, actually con contribute to basically what I'm trying to say here. But and bear with me because I had these strokes that are just making it hard for me to talk the way I want to. But
It's all very clear. I think, it's funny talking about that. I was thinking, I've been thinking a lot lately about Victor Jara, of course, was
Mhm,
executed in Chile. And
mhm,
one of the things he said is that he stopped calling his music protest music because
right.
he felt that had been co-opted by the system itself. And so he started calling his music revolutionary song. And I think, for myself and Reconstruction, it was always this question of like, okay, well, where for the most part we're starving to death. We're trying to figure out where our next meal is going to come from. We're trying to figure out where we're going to live. We used to squat in the Lower East Side, and this was all because we were not making money off our art. We were not making money off our music, and at the same time, I was having, we used to call them reasoning sessions with other artists who all wanted to sign with corporate labels, and these were conscious artists, and their argument was always, oh, you can reach a lot more people. And my
Mhm,
argument was like, but ultimately, what is the message you're reaching them with? That we can't do anything unless we're with the corporations, unless we're with capitalism. So for us, it's always been like we don't believe that the ultimate message and the ultimate change and the ultimate revolutionary change can come by having it sponsored by Sony Records or Warner Brothers or whoever the hell is sponsoring it. There's only so
mhm,
far you can go because that ultimately what you're really teaching people and you're really teaching young people is that you can't do it on your own. You have to have those corporations. And so that's something we've always been tried to defy. And I've got a lot of people who like have no idea that I've been doing, music for 30 years. But the
mhm.
fact of the matter is I have the good feeling that I know that whoever I do reach, I'm reaching legitimately because I'm not reaching them with the money from the same people that are colonizing us, the same people that are, you know, the fascists who are out there right now, as if this is not the first time the fascists have been here. They've been here all along.
Mhm.
Many of us in the music business chose to sign on the dotted line.
Right.
And so for me, it's like, I honestly feel you can't do it. I honestly feel the ultimate message you're giving to people or you're conveying to people is that we can't do it without the corporations.
Yeah, and I don't think that they would have ever allowed. I mean, when you listen to some of the songs that um, Reconstruction is known for, I do not see corporate entities allowing a song about Mumia on their radio stations or putting it out themselves. And I think that's one of the reasons why looking towards um the artists themselves and how they produce, how they release. I think that's why it's really important to me, the whole DIY thing. I should say, I don't even like saying that, but it is important for us to be independent
Yeah,
because being independent means that's your voice.
right. And I,
And
I, I
it's
I think this the you know the system itself knows that too, which is why they know they have to co-opt anything
hmm
that is because anything that's DIY and that's independent is potentially a threat. There's a Banksy quote where he says, you're an acceptable level of threat. And if you weren't, you would know it. One of the things I found was that you can write a song about political things that happened, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, as long as it's not something that's going to proceed as a potential threat now. There's a reason why they still wanted to bring in Asada Shakur, you know, just, as recently as before she died, they were still like, okay, we got to get her. There's a reason why
Hmm.
they assassinated the leader of the Macheteros on one of the independentistas, days, which is Grito de Lares. And there's a reason why he every year he would submit a speech to this event independentista that we have every year in the town of Lares, which was for a rebellion that we had against the Spanish. And every year he was underground, hiding out from the feds, hiding out from the U.S. government.
Is this
And
Filiberto?
Iberto, yes, and he would submit this speech. And while the speech was being played at the Grito de Lares, he was being executed by the feds at the same time. And
Mm.
mind you, he was in his 70s, but there's a reason why they had to get rid of him because he was still potentially a threat because we perceive him as a victory. There's a reason why, they want to take in 94-year-old Raul Castro right now.
Took the words out of my mouth. We'll
I
As
see
long
it
was
as
right
he's
now.
alive,
just about to.
right. So for us, it's always been about we talk about the things that that built us up from the past, but we also try to talk about real things. I had um before this band, I was doing another band called Abrazos Army, and we wrote a song about Oscar Lopez Rivera while he was still in prison. And I was advised not to put the song out because they were like, oh, you're advocating for our right to armed struggle. You're advocating for our right to get free by any means necessary. And I was told, well, that's not the method that was being used to get him out. And sadly, the method that was being used to get him out was what we kind of call the ay bendito thing, which is kind of like, poor guy. He's 70 something years old. He would never do it again. He repents, even though he didn't say he repents. But that was what they were trying to get him out on. And so I was asked not to put the song out. So I waited till after he got out of prison and then I put the song out. And then there were online radio stations that wouldn't play it, you know? And interestingly enough, there was I put out another single and it was funny because it was a song called Viva la Revolu. And it was basically me talking about how, I'm not Che Guevara, I'm not Victor Jara, I'm just a guy who wants to play music. But on the album cover, we had Che Guevara with headphones on. And so the radio stations wouldn't play it because Che Guevara was on the cover. So that I'm realizing, okay, well, these guys, even dead, they're still excuse me, language, they're still a
There's no
potential
worse.
they're still a potential threat. So for me, it's always been about, okay, maybe I'm going to talk about Malcolm, but I'm also going to talk about Mumia, because he's still a threat. They still are not going to let him out of prison because they're going to let him out of prison when he's either in a casket or he's about to be in a casket, and that's the reality. So to me, you know, if I'm so fortunate that I can speak out and that I can have a platform to be heard by people, I'm going to talk about real things, and that's what we tend to not be doing because at the end of the day, most of us have signed on a dotted line and they're like, okay, nothing you say can be a threat. It's funny, I was listening to a into online interview with Gil Noble. You remember Gil Noble from Like It Is?
Black is it?
Yeah, and he was talking about how back in the day when Malcolm was around, that he was afraid of Malcolm, and he was saying that, a lot of the folks and black folks even who now say, oh, they loved Malcolm, they loved Malcolm. Back then they didn't, because back
Right.
then they feared Malcolm. And there's a song by Garland Jeffries. I don't know if you ever listened to Garland Jeffries. If you haven't, you should. He has an album called that came out in the 90s called Don't Call Me Buckwheat.
Oh, I do know that song.
Yeah, yeah. And he has
I
a
know
song
that cut.
on that album called I Was Afraid of Malcolm. And he basically says, between the powder and the talcum, I was afraid of Malcolm. And his whole point is that back then, even black folks were afraid of Malcolm because he was a potential threat to the status quo. He was a potential threat to the system.
I can
He,
attest to that. I can attest to that because
yeah,
my mother, she went to school in the Bronx and she used to see him on the stoop all the time. Now, she grew up in a rural area of New York and very strict Christian to this day. And she had always had issues with Malcolm at that time, hearing him live, just hearing him there because she just considered him to be hateful or something like that. Now, cut to 81, and while she was in college, she was assigned auto the autobiography and changed their entire attitude about him, the entire thing. And she doesn't have that attitude anymore. She's so I
and
think yeah, go.
it's the same thing with Pedro Viso Campos. If you talk to older heads who are still around,
Mhm.
they were afraid of Pedro Viso Campos,
Yeah, they
and
call him crazy.
yeah, exactly. They called him crazy, and they actually, elected a guy who helped Pedro Viso Campos get killed,
Yeah.
and
For the record, I just want to say to our fans, Pedro Biso Campos was Ivy League educated and a veteran of the First World War. He wasn't some loco. He wasn't some maniac. He was a decorated soldier who fought in the American military. But I'm sorry, Prophet, take it away.
and he was a lawyer, and he saw things the way they are, but the point being that, Puerto Ricans in his time were afraid of him, and the same way black folks were afraid of Malcolm. And so these are the real things. And so I don't know, I just feel as it relates to the arts and music, you have to find ways to show people that you don't have to be a part of the system. You don't have to acquiesce, to this corporate co-opting, colonizing entity that we tend to exist under. And a lot of, unfortunately, but since we're talking about Malcolm, Malcolm also talked about how, musicians and celebrities are not revolutionary,
Yes, he always said that.
looking
He always
for
said
them
that.
to be leaders, and that's the truth, and that's the truth. But yeah, for me, it's always been just like, if this is what I am going to do, then I'm going to do it honestly, and I'm going to do it outside of the corporate system. I'm going to do it outside of the colonizers, fucking, system. And that's it. And that's what I've always done, what we've always done, and we'll continue to do it. And I like to believe that the people that I do reach at least are getting something authentic, and they're not being given the wrong messages, which is to just maintain the status quo.
Exactly. I mean, I think you have done that over the past 40 years. And it does, I mean, those who hear your work, I mean, I can also run down a whole bunch of the stuff that you've done. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about all the past projects, which is why I haven't. But when you look at your body of work, I don't think there's anything out there that if anybody heard it, they would have an issue with. As a matter of fact, I mean, I'm talking about musically, um, socially. Well, yeah, there will be some of that. But the truth of the matter is, seriously, I mean, I could see people moving the needle, so to speak, on their own. And damn what popular culture says. It does come to a point where you decide what is going to be quote unquote popular and what is going to be culture. And and I think this is one of the reasons why I wanted you on today, because it's time for people to start listening to uh our voices this way. I mean, even though I mean I know we just said something about we've been talking about and slamming corporate music. But well, we still can consider what we're about to say. In the early 90s, and late 80s, that's when you started seeing from us, whether you was talking about Public Enemy, BDP, and all of them, all of a sudden was in the lexicon. I mean, it was in we was out there blowing it up on the streets, um mainstream. Why it sucks now is because the corporate interests um reset, and now they don't allow that music out anymore. I always tell people it was funny how quickly, it seems like overnight around that time, we went from the X caps
Mhm.
to the blunt caps, like overnight. And you don't hear conscious music on the radio the way we did back in the early 90s. The thing is, we don't have to wait for somebody to let us perform it, put it out there. Hip hop didn't start that way in the first place. So um I think it's incumbent upon those who care enough to make sure that the music is out there. And that's one of the reasons why, like I said, why I wanted you here, because we want people to hear your music. And we want to hear everybody else out there that's blowing up. You just alluded to what's going on and over the past, let's say, year or two with ICE and all of that. And I'm just gonna throw it out. I mean, what was the how have it affected you and the work that you're doing, and basically your life in general?
I mean, speaking as a Puerto
I,
Rican and as a New Rican, for me, it's been the obligation has been to reach out more to other Latinos who aren't Puerto Rican, or automatically, for better or for worse, American citizens. And one of the things we've been doing is at shows, we're handing out little cards in Spanish and English, letting people know that they don't have to talk to ICE, they don't have to talk to the police, etc. And so we just trying to do little gestures like that. It's kind of funny because some of the songs that we've been doing are songs that were on our first record in 1998, the record that you was just holding up, and people think they're like new songs because they seem to be talking about what's happening right now.
yeah, look at it. I mean, the man like Farrakhan,
Yeah,
Pedro's grave.
yeah. Breakfast in America is one that people are thinking is about ICE. So, yeah, it's about these folks, the government basically breaking down your door and taking you in, and all you were doing was sleeping. And at the end we shout out all these different Latin American countries, and so people are thinking that's one of our new songs, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I just think I don't consider being an American citizen a privilege, but I do think that Puerto Ricans, you know, New Yorkers specifically, have an obligation to continue to be the thorn in the side of the system. And right now is a moment where we have to rally around our Latin American brothers and sisters who can't necessarily do it for themselves. There's a lot of you'll see a lot of protests, and you mostly see white people, and it's like, oh, how come there's only white people at this protest that's against ICE? It's like, because if the Latinos come out there and they're gonna get taken in by ICE, and so yeah, I feel like Puerto Ricans are in a unique position right now to be that voice for the voiceless, in this case being other Latin Americans, other Latinos.
Prophet,
Yeah.
I want to thank you as from one Boricua to another. I want to thank you for saying that. It means a lot. I think I have to agree and say it's our duty to stick up for other Latino brothers and sisters. Going along with that idea, you've been an artist or a performer or an activist for a long time now. What advice would you give to other artists, specifically young artists, who want to make politically conscious art but might be afraid of backlash or censorship? What would you say to them? Because it seems like you haven't let that get in your way. You haven't let that get in the way of your creativity. What advice would you give to other artists?
I mean, I think it's simple. We just have to go back to doing it ourselves. We have to go back to being independent. We have to go back to not giving a shit about the music industrial complex, the corporations, and that's it. It's that simple. But it's sad because I think pretty much everything has been monetized
Mhm.
today. So I think a lot of music makers, a lot of artists, sadly go into it with the idea, is this going to make money? And if there's a fear that it's not going to make money, then they're not going to do it. And even, I mean, even words, we're not supposed to use words anymore. We're supposed to say pew pew instead of gun, we're supposed to say
I
unalive
can't say it.
instead of murdered or assassinated, and it's sad. And listening to a news broadcast yesterday, and it was sad because there was a woman. I think she was 75 years old. She was in, some little store getting buying donuts or everything. Anyway, she got into an argument with the person working in the store. She ends up dead. What was interesting is that they were talking to her daughter, who was grown woman, and the woman says about her mother, she says, there's no excuse where you just go into a store and come out unalived. So she didn't say come out murdered, come out killed, And it was just like, so we've created this other thing where we don't even feel comfortable using certain words. And
Yeah.
the thing about it is that certain words will get you unmonetized. And since everybody's putting their stuff online, it's like if you guys wanted to be monetized, and I'm like, guns, killing, murder, you
Yeah.
know, you get them monetized, and that's it. And so, but I think at the end of the day, the first thing is to just stop thinking in terms of, is this going to make me money? Is this going to get me any kind of fame? Is this going to be something that I do for a living? Because, you don't do revolution for a living, You should think of music and art in the same way. I'm not doing it for a living. For whatever reason you are doing it, it shouldn't be that you're trying to do it for a living. And that's the first thing. The second thing is to start creating actually, independent alternative communities again. We lost that. I mean, punk was punk, but at
Yeah.
some point the artists started signing on the dotted line with the corporations and it became this other thing. It's interesting. Guy I know is squatter. He was a squatter from back in the 70s. He's a Puerto Rican priest, actually. And he wrote an article about spatial deconcentration. And I was like, what the hell is spatial deconcentration? And what it was that in the 1960s, when you had the black riots, the black, uprisings, which were black and Puerto Rican, by the way, and, in New York and in Newark, on, Detroit. And after those riots, they were like, okay, how can we make sure these riots don't ever happen again? And what they did was they spatially deconcentrated Black and Puerto Rican communities. So they figured out how to disperse Black folks and Puerto Ricans to all different parts. So now there was just little groups of Black folks here, little groups of Black folks here, so you didn't have the amount of people to create riots that could potentially change shit. And I see the music and punk in particular in the same way. We don't have these pockets of potential dissent anymore. So it's like, maybe you want to rebel, but how are you going to rebel by yourself?
Right.
And it's like, but now, Daryl's off in New Jersey somewhere, and, so and so is off in Philly somewhere, and so is in, I don't know, somewhere in Pennsylvania. I don't even know where, far away. And that was deliberate too. And when I think of, punk rock, it's funny when we first started out, there would be a kid in Idaho and he heard about your band because you did an interview in a punk zine that was put out by another
Mhm.
kid somewhere else. So he heard about your band. He's like, oh, I want to see your band. So he turns himself into a booking agent, and he figures out how to get your band to Idaho, and you're sleeping on his parents' sofa and floor, and he figures out how to bring you there. Maybe they don't have money, so they feed you. You know what I'm saying?
It's so funny too because we were just talking on the show that we was talking about music and culture and all of that. We talked about that because you remember Book Your Own Fucking
Yeah,
Life.
that was our Bible back then.
Yeah.
You know.
And for those who don't know what that is or was, basically before the internet, you there was this book which was basically a global um directory of clubs, labels, in my case, public access,
Yep.
television shows, radio stations. I mean, across the world. So you can contact those those um clubs or wherever if you were saying want to put together a tour for your little band, for your band no one ever heard of or anything like that. Oh yeah, and also bands were listed. And basically it built l- scenes all over the place. I mean, we were all networking like crazy with this book. And I mean, like I said, you can do it in today with the internet and everything, but it's something a little different. It was something very different. It was like, I guess it was a little bit more organic would be the good word to say in back in the 90s. I
I
mean,
feel like I feel like unfortunately the internet sort of comes from without as opposed to coming from within.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. That's
People
what
who
I was.
made Book Your Own Fucking Life were doing it themselves. Even the
Mhm.
book itself was a do-it-yourself thing. And that was the difference. I mean, it was for us, it was a lifesaver because you
Yeah.
know, we weren't going to get on TV, so we were on cable. We weren't going to get on the radio, so we were on pirate radio stations. We weren't going to have a booking agent, so we were booking our own fucking lives all over the place, and we were going all over the place, and we were in magazines, and we were on TV, and but these were all things that were done in a DIY punk fashion, and that's how we got by, and along that lines too, the punk scene was politicized already. Not only was
Hmm.
it DIY, not only was it independent, but it was also anti-fascist, it was also anti-racist, it was also anti-sexist, it was also anti, against homophobia, everything, and so that was real. So that's an experience that I feel, I mean, there's still pockets of it.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's almost I don't know, it's almost performative, I guess, as opposed
Yeah.
to really
There is,
doing
that's
it.
why I was saying by organic. I mean, I think that yes, there are, I mean, we're on the internet now, but there are areas in the internet that that is speaking to that spirit. But by the same token, a lot of the things that don't and are phony is also out there. And so and that we didn't we was able to ferret that out back in the day. We can't do it as easy as we did back.
Yeah, funny thing. We used to play. And matter of fact, you videotaped us there. We used to play ABC No Rio, which was a squat. The folks had
Mhm.
taken over and they turned it into a punk space. So we used to play there all the time. We had actually two nights, like Friday nights, we would show like political Latino films, and then Saturdays we would have all people of color punk, hardcore punk matinees. And
Mhm.
it's interesting because so one year Green Day had become, they signed under the dotted line, they were big and famous, and they wanted to play at ABC No Rio because it was, they could show themselves, yeah, they're getting back to their roots, even though that wasn't really their roots. But at ABC No Rio told them no. And we were all like, wow, yeah, that's when it's real,
They had to. They
yeah.
had to. I
But
mean,
it's funny because CBGB didn't tell people no, and
right.
CBGB there was a lot of people who didn't come from the punk roots, but wanted to play CBGB because it was this, famous punk
Yeah.
palace by then. And so all these bands would come through CBGB, and we were signed to CBGB Records, so it was kind of like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And we used to, we used to argue with the owner, which is Hilly Crystal, who was like 75 years old at the time. We're like arguing with him, "What are you doing letting these posers play here?" And he's like, "Well, we gotta keep the place open." But it was, yeah, but it was that. It's, at a certain point, everything lost its authenticity. And I
Yeah.
think, unfortunately, it's funny though, talking about the internet. I mean, like, there was the Occupy movement some years back, and they
15
actually,
years ago this year.
yeah, and they actually were using the internet to communicate with each other. And also Arab Spring also used the internet.
Ooh.
So they were using the internet to let people know, okay, we're gonna be here, we're gonna be here, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this. And so there is ways you can work it, but
Hmm.
unfortunately, because they knew that there was a potential where we could use it in these ways, they made sure to find a way to just turn it into sort of a circus or sort of something that occupies your time. So you just scroll all the time and you don't know what's real and you don't know what's AI and you don't know what's a bot that's arguing with you about something, and all that.
Yeah, that's another big problem. The whole thing about what's real, what's not. That's
They could also monitor you on the internet,
yeah.
which is something you couldn't do when you had the physical artifact. If I had a Punk Planet zine in my hand, they couldn't monitor that. I had it and I was going to read it. Now I have to go through the internet and there's somebody behind the scenes like watching everything I read and watching everything I look at. And I'm like, it's that,
You can
we
also beat up neo-Nazis whenever without anybody trying to debate you later.
without anybody trying to debate you whether you have a right to beat up neo-Nazis.
This that's the part that
No, we used to do punk shows like deep in Pennsylvania and stuff where we knew that the neo-Nazi, and it was sad because they were punks, but they were, fat, white, neo-Nazi, white supremacist, fascist punks. And we knew they were gonna come to the show. So we would go with like weapons and shit, and we'd go there to play. But it was the craziest thing because you'd see, majority white punk kids fighting these white fascist punk kids. And a lot of times we were just sitting there like, but but this was back then. We had one time actually, and so the shit breaks out in a big fight, and my drummer stabbed a neo-Nazi with a pen or something. But anyway, but the police show up, right? And the police tried to arrest us, the band. And then
oh cute.
it turned out that some of the police were the parents, the fathers of these Nazi kids that had tried to disrupt the party.
Oh, I
And
would love to get
yeah,
the police report from that day.
and meanwhile they're trying to arrest us, and everybody's like, "No, they're the band," And we're just like, well, I mean, we stabbed somebody with a pen, but that's beside the point. He had it coming. He had it coming. But yeah, no, but yeah, you can't do that online, and you really can't do anything online. They're
No, you
monitoring
shouldn't.
this conversation right now.
Yeah, I mean, you could. I always tell people you can use the internet to some organizing, but when it comes to a lot of the stuff that you think might be a little sensitive, remember, everything on the internet is being seen by everybody,
Yep. Yeah.
even when you don't think that it is.
Yeah. I had a
So,
friend. We had a march in Brooklyn because some Puerto Ricans were being called in to try to speak, whatever. And this one friend of mine, he's like, "Oh, we should start doing these protests online." And I'm like, "You just don't want to come out here, do you?" You just don't want to.
oh man.
This is too much trouble to come out here. But yeah, I just think, to answer your question, Christian, because I don't know if I did, but yeah, I just think, yeah, we need to take it back to the do-it-yourself alternative, you know, punk ideas of saying fuck the system for real and not having anything to do with it. Even, getting back to Puerto Rican nationalism. I mean, that was under El Bisu, the idea was that we would not acknowledge US authority over any Puerto Rican. So that meant we didn't have to obey their laws. We didn't have to go by their rules. We didn't have to accept, and I think, when you talk about anarchism, the whole idea is that you're autonomous. If we, one of the things we've been trying to do in Puerto Rico, actually, which is not anarchist, although younger people are actually moving in those directions now, currently. But one of the things, we've been talking about is that, okay, in the absence of liberating Puerto Rico from US colonialism, let's start thinking autonomously. In other words, let's just ignore them, which is what Pedro Luis Campos was basically saying, even though he was also saying go toe to toe against them.
Right.
Every average Puerto Rican could just ignore them and just be like, yo, I'm going to make my own food. I'm going to farm. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And I'm going to pretend that they have no authority over it. And then let the macheteros and others actually liberate you, but you become liberated. It's funny, years back when one of the members of the FALN, Fuerzas Armadas de Liberación Nacional, which is Dicia Pagan, she got out of prison and they asked her, "Oh, so how does it feel to finally be free?" And she said, "I was always free. That's why I did what I did in the early 1970s, because I was free here already." And her mission was to free everybody else here, but also physically. You
Prophet,
know,
let me ask you, why is it important for you to center being Puerto Rican and your Neo-Rican identity? Why is it important to center that identity in your work?
that's a tough question. I mean, I've always just done it, but it's interesting because I've always taken great joy in the fact that I've always seen Puerto Ricans and New Yorkers, which are the same thing, but not, as being the thorn in the side of the system. As I was online, since we're talking about being online, one time, and somebody was saying that the only revolutionary people in the United States were Black Americans, right? And then they said, and maybe on the West Coast, Chicanos, right? So all I did was I found all these quotes of prominent, Black revolutionaries talking about Puerto Ricans. So I put, you know, A. Brown on there. I put Assad on there. I even put Martin Luther King talking about Puerto Ricans on there. And I just put a
Really?
bunch yeah, so I put a comment, just of them talking about Puerto Ricans as revolutionary people as part of the struggle. And they got mad at me, but I realized that they were new to being here. They were younger Latinos,
Mhm.
they weren't Puerto Rican. They were younger Latinos, and they had no idea that Puerto Ricans have always been part of the liberation struggle in this country, not just in Puerto Rico. And there were Puerto Ricans in the Black Panthers, just like there were African Americans in the Young Lords. And we were doing all these things. So for me, it was like, okay, my father, told me to identify as Afro Puerto Rican, which is what he was. And, but with him telling me that, it was also him telling me about this history of all the badass shit that Puerto Ricans had done and New Yorkers had done. And so for me, it was always like, okay, how could you not? And sadly, I found along the way that there were a lot of Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico and in New York and in Philly and in Chicago and in Florida, blah, 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 who didn't know about the colonial situation in Puerto Rico and didn't see ourselves as being these colonized people. And many cases they were calling themselves Spanish. It's like,
Ugh.
oh, yeah, we eat our Spanish food and, we Spanish people. And I was like, holy shit, I have an obligation to be the one that wears that Puerto Rican flag on his sleeve or on his chest. And, so that's been the thing for me always. Like, it's funny too, because lately there's been a conversation about people saying that Puerto Ricans, New Yorkers, are guests in the house of hip hop, right?
No,
But they're
no,
not, but they're not
no.
co-created. But I'd say
You gotta
that,
stop making that mistake.
yeah, but that's a conversation. But what's funny to me is that I was reading, I think it was Can't Stop, Won't Stop, right? And I'm
Hmm.
looking at the pictures, the photographs in there, photographs, from the mid 70s, early 80s. And what do you see in a bunch of these photographs? You see Puerto Rican flags, you know?
Hmm.
So you see, B-boys, and they got
The
their Puerto
big,
Rican flag belt. You see on a wall graffiti at Puerto Rican flag. And so
Oh yeah.
when I saw all that, I was like, oh, you know what? If I ever do music, I gotta make sure that you identify me as a Puerto Rican, that I may be unknown in my lifetime, but if anybody unearths that Liberation Day, which you were holding, it's like, oh shit, this was a Puerto Rican guy, a New Yorican guy back in 1998 saying all this stuff that's resonating, 50 years later, 60 years later, 100 years later.
hmm
It was specifically a Puerto Rican that did that said that felt that talked about that. And that's the reason I've always put it out there. I think it's funny, there's another story. There was a hip hop group called the Fantastic Five, right? It was five MCs.
Oh, that goes way back.
That goes way, way back. Two of the MCs were Puerto Rican, right? One of them went by Prince Whippoorwhip, and the other one was Ruby D, right? So back
Hmm.
then, now mind you, this is in the 70s. So hip hop wasn't huge yet. It wasn't corporatized yet. Prince Whippoorwhip didn't want to be identified as a Puerto Rican MC because he was like, oh, my chances will be limited. So he was identified as a black MC, right? Simply black. You know. Ruby D, who had straighter hair and stuff, ends up being the Puerto Rican MC, right? So years later, people are like, oh, the first Puerto Rican MC is Ruby D. And Prince Whippoorwhip, this is like 30 years later, he's like, no, no, I was. They're like, but you didn't want to be 30 years ago, or 40 years ago, whatever it
See, I
is.
never knew this story. I never
Yeah,
knew.
yes. So
Yeah,
that's the thing. So for me, it was always like, yo, I've got to make sure, if nothing else, you know that it was a Puerto Rican who did this. You know that it was Puerto Rican who said this. You know how the
it's
Puerto
just
Rican who was
it
fighting the power legitimately and anti-corporate.
it's just weird to hear that people are obtuse to the fact that the cultures came at the same time with hip hop. We all built that. I mean, I always tell people whenever it comes up, and this is just there's a reason why a lot of the live events, the biggest club in hip hop back in the early days was the Latin Quarter. I mean, it was always there. Even when it wasn't there, it was always there. And it's just like, yo,
I,
don't
I,
sleep on it.
I
I
would say
think,
freestyle music in the late 80s, early 90s that they called Latin hip hop, which as a kid, for me it's
Hmm.
Stevie B and like Lil
Hmm.
Susie and like all that dance music
That was when you was a kid.
that was when I was a kid. I'm the generation after you guys. That's the stuff my older cousins would play, but what they call freestyle now, that was what they used to call Latin hip hop. And Love Letter with Giggles. I mean, those were Latinos.
yep, yep.
Those were Puerto Ricans.
I think where people are getting it twisted though is that they think if you give props to Puerto Ricans or if you give props to West Indians or whatever, then you're somehow taking things away from Black Americans. But what they're not understanding is that the reason Puerto Ricans or Jamaicans or other West Indians were a part of hip hop's beginnings was because we were living in Black American neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So nobody's denying that it's not Black culture. It is Black culture. But the point is that we are a part of Black culture in the United States.
Is one of the reasons why we wish Luis was here, because Luis is Marquez. We work with him from time to time. He's an author, and he's out in Portland, and he speaks a lot about the conflicts the um, between Black and Latino in but and he said, and I'm always saying that seems to be a dynamic that happens out west. It's not as prevalent here on the east.
It wasn't, the interesting thing with Puerto Ricans, and mind you, Puerto Ricans started coming to the United States at the
Hmm.
beginning of the 20th century, actually,
Right.
end of the 19th century, because
1898, yeah.
yeah, exactly. And Puerto Ricans and Cubans specifically were trying to free Cuba and Puerto Rico at the time. And the Puerto Rican flag was created in New York City. You
Hmm.
know, but the reason I bring this up is because, Puerto Ricans, it's not like they could go to any community. Oh, I'm going to live here. They had to go to the ghetto, and the ghetto
Hmm.
was Black Americans. So
Right.
we've,
That
been
was my family.
sharing, yeah, we've been to, that was pretty much all our families who came to New York City. And so we've been sharing the ghetto, the Black ghetto, with Black Americans from jump, and that hasn't changed. And so I think the reason there's a difference on the West Coast because it wasn't quite the same. Chicanos, Mexicans were already there.
Hmm.
Mexicans were
Yeah.
there before there was the
The
United States.
border crossed them.
Yeah, the border crossed them exactly. And so,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
I think it also starts to change, at least psychologically, when other Latinos start coming to New York and they don't realize that Black Americans and Puerto Ricans have always had a relationship together.
Hmm.
And so you start getting other Latinos who are like, oh, we're different, and them not even realizing that the reason they start coming here is because Puerto Ricans were here already speaking
Hmm.
Spanish. We opened the
Hmm.
door for them to come, but they don't know that we already always had a relationship with Black Americans. We were already always brothers and sisters with Black Americans from jump because we had to be. It's like my father talking to me about, yeah, that, the guys that schooled him on the street on how to survive in the streets were Black Americans who were his friends, and they were a little older than him. And they were like, okay, this is what you got to do to survive. And that's the same stuff he taught me, how to survive on the street. But that's something that came before a lot of people who are here now, before a lot of Latinos who are here now realize. And so there's this idea, oh yeah, there's this friction, but there's never been a friction in that way. We had as Puerto
Hmm.
Ricans, we had more friction with the Irish or the Italians, hence West Side Story and shit, and
Probably
that's
had more friction within our own communities too.
that too, I mean, Puerto Ricans we had a lot of friction with Dominicans, when they started coming later. Dominicans don't start coming in large numbers until the U.S. invades Dominican Republic. That's 1960s. We had already been here since the early part of the 20th century, but so I think, when you talk about hip hop and who's creators and who's co-creators and, all that stuff, you have to talk about these things. The other thing though, too, is like, I prefer to use the word Puerto Rican rather
Hmm.
than Latino because when you say Latino, it does confuse things. And then you say
Understood. Un-
Latinos as a whole,
I was
you know.
basically, it's just like whenever I say put people of color, it's just like I'm trying to just basically go across the board. And so there was no um malice when I had said that. It was just that I was trying to make sure that I got everybody that I was talking about in general. Um, but um, but yeah, I generally try to be careful with that. Brad, did you have anything? Because we've been speaking for a while and I hadn't heard from you.
It's been a fascinating conversation. I've learned so much. It was kind of just fun to sit here and be a fly on the wall. The one question I kept thinking about Prophet as you were talking is, and I teach American history, so my brain is always working this way. Like the fascists have been here for at least 500 years. It's been a fascist system, a racist system, a sexist system. Um, but is at this particular moment, is there a new urgency now? Even though you can go back to songs you wrote, 3 decades ago, and they're still relevant, is this moment different that we're in right now?
I don't know. It's a funny question because if we go back 500 years, then we're talking about myself and Christians' ancestors being genocided. You know what I'm saying? We're not Tainos anymore, and then of course we go back a certain number of years, and you have black people enslaved in shackles. You go back a certain number of years, and you have black people not having the right to vote and having dogs sicked on them and being shot with fire hoses and bullets, and you have the FBI assassinating people in their bed, and so you go back even 2005 and you have the FBI assassinating Filiberto Ojeda Rios. So I guess my point is that for some of us this is not necessarily this crucial vital moment that's never happened before, but I can understand how for others it might be. But regardless, we still have a need to do something in the moment because this is the moment we're living in, and so that's kind of where we're at. I've when Reconstruction stopped, we stopped doing music as Reconstruction in like 2006, I think it's 2005, which was the year that Filiberto was assassinated, and we started doing other things because we didn't feel that, music or art was going to really change anything. But whether we were doing music or art or doing other things, things were still leading up to what we have right now. So I guess, our new album, there's a little plug here.
Yeah,
Our new
it's time
album
for talk
is,
about the new
Can't wait.
album.
All right.
yeah, our new album is called Love Harder. And the idea being that if we had all loved each other harder, we wouldn't be in this position that we're in right now. And so I guess my point is that I feel like we could have been doing a lot more in all these years that were leading up to what we're dealing with right now. And one of the things we could have been doing was loving each other harder instead of competing against each other, instead of, just being fucked up to each other, which is what a lot of us are. And, as we've accepted capitalism, then we've accepted all the evilness of capitalism. And a part of that evilness is how, there's a saying, with Puerto Ricans, and there's a song, "Quítate tú pa ponerme yo," step aside so I could go in that position. And I feel like that's what we've become over these many years. And now that they're doing whatever the fuck they want to us, we're not even in a position to really fight back because we don't know how to fight back. There was when Abby Hoffman committed suicide, he in his suicide note, and we're not supposed to say suicide. When Abby Hoffman unalived himself,
Oh, we're not monetized,
I know,
so you don't have to worry
kidding.
about
Yeah,
us.
no, I'm kidding. But when he committed suicide, he left a suicide note, and one of the things he said was, "We let them get too strong."
Yeah.
And that's how I look at these times we're in. We let them get too strong, all of us, because all of us were trying to figure out how to survive a system that really wasn't made for us. It was made to crush us anyway. And we were just trying to do that. And we were trying to be like, oh, how can I monetize this so I can make money? How can I do this? How can I, do I need to step on Daryl's feet in order to get in that position? Do I need to push Christian aside in order to get in that position? And that's what we've been doing for the past several years, And, when I stopped doing music in 2006, I started doing other things. And I'm like, we're in such a sorry position. I was going to say as a movement, but I'm not convinced we have a movement anymore. I'm really not.
I think that's one of the reasons why, and this is a plug on our part. We're trying right now to organize something called the Days of Unity, in which basically we have performances, festivals, or whatever, um, on a particular day or a particular weekend, across the country, across the globe and all of that. We was originally going to do it on May 9th because that was the birthday of both John Brown and Sophie Sophie Shaw. Um, and I'm thinking like next year, May Day falls on a Saturday. And we could probably do something and start organizing for that day. It gives us enough time to get everybody on the same page and everything. But it's an effort. I look at it. I don't know how Christian and Beth see it, but I just see it as an opportunity to get out there so people can see, just like it would have the same kind of spirit um as say Occupy, but with a little bit more of a soundtrack. As something that says that, you know, we're here, we're just simply trying to say, hey, look, you don't have to live that way. And and so I'm just hoping that we can put it together and we can have the kind of spirit that we had in the say the, late 80s, early 90s, whenever we was out there trying to tell people we're going to fight this power, you know. I mean, we were unfortunate. The difference between back then and now, we're going to fight the power without corporate help.
Yeah.
So, we have been speaking for what, 45 minutes or so. So, so I think
We need to all shut up now and let Beth
do the shout outs
for
and
the next 15 minutes.
I'm sorry, Beth.
No, it's been fantastic, and I'm just glad I got to listen to the conversation, and I got to ask the question I had, so we're all good.
Hey, I'm gonna tell you flat out that I'm learning more and more of every time Prof and I talk. I mean, he's schooling me all the time. And I really do appreciate that. You'll have, and I was in one of his music videos not too long ago. But we actually aired it here on the show. But what was the thing that I did just a couple of weeks ago for you that you was putting out? What was
Oh,
that?
oh yeah. Um, well, many years ago, I was in a movie called Machetero. I was acting, and we based it on this movie called Ghost Dog with Forrest Whitaker. Have you ever seen it?
Yeah, the
Yes, I did.
Samurai, Way of the
Yeah.
Samurai.
Yeah, I love that movie. One of my favorite movies. So we based it on that, but we made the character a guy who decides that he's a machetero. So he's a self-styled machetero living in New York. Anyway, so I acted in the movie. So since we based it on Ghost Dog, then the character that I was playing, he wrote a machetero manual, right? And he gives it to some kid. Anyway, so to try to have some degree of authenticity, I wrote like several little blurbs. There's maybe like six of them in the movie, and you hear the kid reading them in the movie. And anyway, so we were in the midst of making the film, and so we were showing it in different, barrios. So we showed it in East Harlem, we showed it in the Lower East Side, and we would show it to people so that we could get their input, and then we would go back into the lab and work on the film more. And so we showed it at one, particular place in the Lower East Side. So the next day I was walking on the street and this woman runs up to me and she's like, "Where can I get it? Where can I get it?" I was like, "Get what?" She's I think she's gonna say the film, but she says the Machetero manual. Where can I get it? And I'm thinking to myself, there's no real Machetero manual. So, but after that, every once in a while when something will pop into my head, I'm thinking about clothes or something. So I would write a little blurb on clothes, on books, on art, on whatever. And eventually it turned into like a bunch of blurbs. So anyway, all these years later, I put it out in when did I put it out? I put it out in September on the Grito de Lares actually. And so I put it out as a book. I self-published it because it's DIY. And so that the thing you were reading was one of the blurbs in the book. So I asked all these different people to read a blurb from the book, and they were going to make it into like this long film of just people reading the blurbs.
Is it out yet or no?
The blurb, the video itself.
Yeah.
Well, we put individual ones, but we're waiting to get more, and it's going to be this long ass thing that people are not going to want to watch, but we're going to force it on them anyway. But yeah, but that's what it started out. So yes, I do have a machetero manual. It's called the mini manual for the modern day machetero.
Oh man,
I like it.
I obviously love it
You can,
because
and you
I
can
mean,
only get it. You can only get it by coming to one of my shows. It's not online, and it never will be.
and I will be at one of the shows this summer.
And
I
then
have to be. You know, I'm bringing the camera too, right?
yeah, of course.
All right, brother. I want to.
You have the earliest videotape of Reconstruction.
Oh wow.
From
Yeah.
the
You see no real.
I gotta find that, Daryl.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I got it.
We gotta digitize that. I need a copy
But I
of
have
that.
but I have an earlier one
Yeah.
from the whatchamacallit. Damn it. Again, bear with me. It was the it's actually on YouTube right now.
Okay.
It's actually on YouTube. It was the rally that happened back in
Oh, that 1998.
Yeah, there's a
in
video of you
90.
guys performing Liberation Day live. I was actually I was
Yeah,
watching a lot of your
that's
stuff today. Okay.
yeah, that's at the UN.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
we organized a march and rally to the UN, and and
I
Daryl
shot
was,
that.
yeah, Daryl was there, and then it's funny. The ABC No Real one is funny though too because it's in the cellar,
Yeah.
and the city ended up outlawing the cellar, and so the shows had to move up to the first floor, which was not as interesting. The cellar was dope. So and at the time I had dreadlocks, and you would jump up and you would hit your head on the ceiling, and all this rust would get into your and it was just great. But the city came in one day and said, no more shows in the cellar. So you have the show in the cellar.
Oh, now I gotta find it. I thought because I have so that means I have two shows I shot
Yeah.
you in.
Yep.
Oh wow. I did not know this.
Yeah.
Why don't I know this?
Those were our first shows. Yeah.
Man. Oh boy, I miss those days. I really do. I knew I was going to back then that I was going to miss those days, but brother, I want to thank you for coming out.
Yeah, thank you
I
guys.
really do appreciate you coming in because
Thank you so much, Prophet.
Thank you.
yeah, we will be talking again. So thanks, bro.
All right.
Prophet, muchas gracias y muchísimas gracias y mucho gusto. Thank you for everything.
And that was the non-for-profit, not-for-profit interview that we conducted. And he's been a long time friend of mine. We've been in several events together. I mean, we went down to Memphis a couple of years ago. I've been in some of his videos. And a lot of stuff that we had discussed in the past, and and like I said, I mean, I'm always being schooled by him, and it's always important to I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, there isn't a lot of when you go beyond your the walls that have been built around you. There's a world that you just get about that you get mad about not knowing anything about beforehand, and that's what basically happens with me whenever I'm talking to Prof. So and Bess, I'm sure because and again I have to apologize because you didn't speak a lot in the interview, but you definitely was it was important what you had said. it was very important what you had said.
There were so many things that Prophet said that were important, but I thought one thing that really fits with the kind of the ethos of the show and Out is that we're not gonna sell our souls, our talents, our abilities to corporations to make money. Even though people have to survive, the fact that Prophet has refused to do that is just so powerful. And the power that what we create can have if we can just maintain that independence. And so we're going to do it for the right reasons. I thought that was really important. And then I think the point too that, it is a very terrible moment, a scary moment. But that's been American history for 500 years. For most people, I thought that was an important point too.
And I think that the important thing is that we maintain that. I think one of the reasons why you are only now hearing about One People's Project and Antifascism is because we didn't um look for that money from corporate interests. We don't get our donations from Pepsi. We get it from you. I mean, and I bring it up because we have our um spring spring fundraiser going on for another month, and we definitely need your help. But beyond that, it's important for you and everybody else that likes the work that we do um to support, because we're not going to go chasing after that great almighty dollar from the corporations. We can't, because then you're their bitch, so to speak. And pardon me from using that language, but the truth of the matter is we got to maintain our independence from those kinds of things, because eventually they'll come to you and try to take you out, or try to use you to take out somebody that you really don't want to take out. And I look at the stuff. I mean, yeah, you see me in some corporate things in the past. Of course you did. But in the end, I think with me, it's a case of the reason why you haven't seen me um all the time out there like you might see some others that do the kind of work that we do on the corporate level, is because I don't think that we will be effective if we were up there. We will be untouchable, for one thing. And when I say that, it means that um, folks in communities who need help um, couldn't reach us. And I don't want that to happen. I really do not want that to happen. Um, so back, I'm doing a plug, but basically I'm just saying straight up, we need your help coming up. Beth is going to tell you how you can help us via Substack or um, Patreon, where we are now. And I'm just going to turn it over to her.
Yeah, but what you can do that doesn't cost you anything is to follow us, subscribe on Substack, YouTube, Patreon, Facebook. We are everywhere, and we are anti-capitalist, and we believe that what the content we're creating is part of the work that will help create the change that will create this world of liberation for all people. And so we create the content, it's out there, it's open, there's no paywall. But do subscribe. And if you can afford to send a little cash, if you can afford to be a paid subscriber, that helps One People's Project and Out to continue to do the work. But if you can't, it's all still there for you.
And we also have merch on the One People's Project website. You could check it out. We have a book, or rather a bump bumper sticker that's for our times right now, and I can't seem to find it in this trash that I have on my desk.
We got
Um,
shirts, we got hats, we got stickers, we got bumper stickers, we got books, we got all the good stuff.
I thought I had
Pamphlets.
my Antifa beanie here, but I don't know where it went to.
yeah, but what I want to hype you up. See, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to basically put it up on the screen. The picture that you see is of the bumper sticker, and I said it was something for our times, is because if Chud the builder can use his free speech to spread hate, we can do it to warn people like him. He has consequences, and he's already learning that hate has
Yeah, he's
consequences.
about to
So
do time, so
yeah, and and by the way, he's not getting out. I mean, things might be lessened. He may not get as much time that they're talking about now. He may have a few um charges dropped, but he's doing some time. He shot somebody and he shouldn't have. There's no probation for this one. So so but that's my little rant for about a guy who I didn't even know existed 2 weeks ago. It's incredible how that went. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if anybody well, folks know Paul Miller, aka Gypsy Crusader. He's over there hyping him up too, as a friend of his and all of that. He's another one of those racist trolls on the internet, and he only lives maybe a half a mile away from where I'm at right now. So
New Jersey has all the dirt bags.
oh, we're gonna have to do something about that.
Good food and
No,
bad
no.
dirt bags.
Tennessee's got its fair share.
Oh yeah, yeah, but well, no, I would say Jersey. The one thing I would say about Jersey, and I always say this, is that the right wingers in this state are afraid of their own damn shadows. I mean, they know that when they pop their heads, we want to just knock their black block off. Their black
And in
off. I like
Tennessee,
that.
they're in the capital.
Yeah, dig.
Yep.
I mean, I was joking about to Prof about how um we used to be able to just smack around Nazis back in the day without having to deal with a debate. Later it's like, yo, that was the history back in the day. We handled business up here. But I'm gonna tell you something, when you go down south, they handled it down there too. They used to put back, I remember back in the day in Jacksonville, there was always stories about how the anti-fascists out there, especially the anti-fascist skinheads, um, put the Nazis on house arrest. Basically, after 10 o'clock, you did not go out as a Nazi for any capacity in any capacity.
Fantastic. Yeah.
If you
Good.
did, you
Keep
got
them
beat
indoors.
down.
Stay in home. Go back and hide. Climb under your rocks.
If it was basically on site back in that day. So listen, I want to I know this show has went pretty long, so I don't want to just keep everybody, but and I, but we'll have something for you next week, and what we have for you now. We talked about the first album and one of the songs, the first Reconstruction album, and we're going to give you to say goodbye. One of the songs from that album. It's called "Breakfast in America." It was mentioned in the interview, and it resonates today, and it's a hell of a song. So so take care, y'all. We'll see you next week, and enjoy the show. Enjoy the video, I should say. Bye. Me and my worst.
So you tried to make me a slave, son. You're my pride by pointing your big guns. Guess it wasn't a total disaster. Learn my lesson. Welcome, my master.